Short on local water supplies and long on regulatory requirements? Do a deep dive with us by listening to the Full Circle podcast to learn how Las Virgenes Municipal Water District and the Triunfo Water and Sanitation District are meeting 21st century water supply challenges for a portion of the Los Angeles and Ventura County regions.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Full Circle podcast, where we dive deep into water topics of all kinds, specifically to the Las Virgenes-Conejo region, and especially the new and up-and-coming pure water project, Las Virgenes-Triunfo, which is set to bring us a new and, more importantly, a local supply of water, which is very badly needed in our region. My name is Ricky Clark. I am a public affairs associate with Las Virgenes Municipal Water District, and I am your host. And I am joined by two very special guests who decided to join us for our first episode, and I will introduce them both in just a second. But I really wanted to set the tone of this podcast and really kind of put forth why this is coming at this specific time. Obviously, we have endured years at this point of some of the worst drought that our state has seen. These water supply challenges and the availability of our water has certainly been at the forefront of public consciousness, where it might not always be because of its ease and the way that we get it and its convenience. But certainly the water supply challenges that we've had and subsequent water use restrictions have had everyone talking, right? And then we have a couple or 2 or 3 months of record rain. And now all of a sudden we're on the opposite side of the spectrum, where we have more than we can even move and store in time. And so we really wanted to continue this discussion and keep these topics at the forefront of public consciousness and make sure that everyone is well informed and involved in the conversation. And so that is the goal for our very first episode. We really want to delve into the history of the region and sort of talk about how it was really mainly shaped by water. So today I have with me two men that really need no introduction at all, both titans in the industry in their own regard. First, I would like to introduce Glen Peterson.
Hi, Ricky.
Thank you for joining us. Glen served on the Las Virgenes Water Board for about 32 years, correct? Before he retired in 2018. And since then has served as our representative to Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. He's led tours of the State Water Project. He's led tours of the Colorado River. He has certainly been a great advocate for water in our region, and certainly someone that carries the history with him and shares it with all of us. Thank you for joining us today, Glen. Our second guest I'd like to introduce also needs no introduction, our general manager, David Peterson. Good afternoon, Dave.
Hi, Ricky. Thank you.
Dave has been our GM here at Las Virgenes Municipal Water District for about 10 years now. And has been advocating for the region, both in increasing our water supply availability and access, as well as leading us in the Pure Water project as well. So thank you both for joining us today. As I mentioned, water is a very complex issue in general throughout the state, but we have a very unique history in the Las Virgenes-Conejo region as it pertains to water specifically, correct? Glen, can you talk about sort of how our agency was formed and how it really kind of shaped our service area in the region that we're in right now?
Well, I think you need a picture of what the community looked like when it was formed. It was basically pods of community: Malibu Lake, Old Agora, Hidden Hills, Montanito. That was about it. A few more pods here and there, but they're just pods of community around. And each community had their own problems. In Malibu Lake, they had, Lakeside had a well, and the well's name was Old Stinky. And they got to the point that the water quality got so bad and the quantity got so small that in the 30s and 40s, they had times when they were given, 30 gallons a week per family, which is very, very little water. But it was very poor quality, full of manganese and iron, and if you sat out a bowl of water in the daytime by dark, it would be rusted all around it. In Hidden Hills, everyone woke up one morning and turned on their showers, and there was no water. And McNeil Stell, who was was on the Water District Board for many years, he went up and looked at the tank and the well and realized there wasn't any water in the ground. And so those two items really forced the community to come together and search for water. A committee was formed by Bob Boyd, who was the postmaster in Agora for years, and he started a committee, and they went down to Metropolitan Water District. They studied whether they should try to capture water here, but the quality would be so bad that it wouldn't be worth it. So the only quality of any kind is in Westlake Village, and it's still poor quality water. But there's very small amount of water in the community, so a dam didn't make much sense.
Sure.
So they went down to the Metropolitan Water District. 3 women did. Ellen DeCartier, who ran the Enterprise, Las Virgenes Enterprise. Alice Stell, who was the Alice Stell School is named after. She was very instrumental in creating the school district. And the other one was Elizabeth Oskatenska. She ran Hughes Realty in Agora. And they, as a committee, went down and spoke to Mr. Deemer, who was the general manager of Metropolitan Water District at that time. And Mr. Deemer gave his conditions. And one of the conditions was that they go to Burbank to get their water. And they gave the same condition to Callejas to go to Burbank. And so we decided to team up and go as a group to Burbank, bring pipes all the way from Burbank to get our water. Then it was only Colorado River water. There was no state project water. They came back to Mr. Deemer, giving the opinion of the community, of the committee. And Mr. Deemer was a little bit for his times. He said, "What's the matter with you people out there? Don't you have any men?" Because they're all women going down and talking. Well, that's been a great history in our district.
And this was, correct me if I'm wrong, around 1958.
Yes.
Right. So this is in the 50s,
and it was women-led. Yes.
Yeah.
And Mr. Deemer was well known for his good old boyness.
Yes, sure.
But, anyways, they decided to put it to a vote, the community, and put it to a vote. It passed very, very handsomely. They bonded for $6 million worth of bonds. The assessed value of the community was $6 million. So they were bonding their entire assessed value on this water coming. But it was a good bet, because today there's over $37 billion worth of investment in this community in assessed value. So it's been a good investment.
And that all began with securing a solid water supply.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was state project water, which is a little saltier than the water we currently get. And what happened in 1970, the state water project was brought into town, and the treatment plant, the Jensen treatment plant, was created, which is in Granada Hills. And as a result of that, we get state project water, and we can get some Colorado River water, but not very much. Not to our build out. At the time, we built the pipes going to Burbank for the community that we looked at in the future, but it wasn't big enough. So that's our story.
You know, I think, again, because of the convenience of how water ends up in our homes, it's not something that people think about oftentimes, but really, anytime you're establishing a community or really civilization, what you have to start with is a water source. And by the trailblazers that were here back then that decided to, go forth and get a new water source because they knew that what we had wasn't enough. I mean, that really set the tone for this area. And Glen, you kicked some really nice history. Obviously, you know your stuff when it comes to water in this region. Can you talk a little bit about your background and your unique history in water?
Well, my background, I don't have a heavy background in water. I was in agriculture as a kid in the Central Valley in Bakersfield. I picked grapes, I picked cantaloupes, I picked all kinds of things, and I worked in packing sheds. But I came to the area through the Claretian missionary fathers who had Claretville, which is now King Gillette Ranch. And that's how I came to this area and loved the area and decided to stay here. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I saw that a realtor got to go hiking, and that was really funny. He got paid for it. So I being young, I thought that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I was a realtor for 27 years. And got very involved in the community and the politics of the community. And I was the chief petitioner for what has become the city of Agora Hills. it was supposed to be the city of Rancho Las Virgenes, which would have incorporated originally Westlake, Agoura, and Calabasas, but it was limited to just Agoura Hills. So, and I was left out of the city, so I couldn't run for city council, obviously. Probably would have if I was in the city, but and I didn't have children, so I didn't see the school district or something. So water I thought would be an interesting thing. I knew some people in the area and ran for the board. Lost the first time by 17 votes. I think mainly because I supported the peripheral canal and my opponent was silent on the issue. But it's something we're still talking about today. But that was how I got involved in it. And then once I got into it, I really loved the subject and loved policy making and have grown in it. I've learned something every day new.
Oh man, I have to say that's really encouraging, because when I'm sitting at this table with two people that know so much about water, to hear you say that you're still learning every single day something new, that makes me feel great too. So you mentioned being left out of the city, and obviously when we created our own water source that allowed the cities to remain the cities. Can you talk about why locals back then were determined not to be annexed to LA?
Well, the city of LA had water, and they were searching for customers all around the state. They were searching in Pasadena and Santa Monica, and it's really funny. In Catherine Mulholland's book, she says alcohol played the major role why they were created as cities, because in Pasadena was a dry city, and they didn't want to join LA because it would no longer be dry. And Santa Monica, you couldn't get a drink before 12 o'clock on Sunday. And that's the reason why they didn't want to be part of it. So that's how they both came into it. But basically, when the city of Hidden Hills was incorporated, it brought an end to the valley because Southern California Edison had purchased what is now Calabasas Park, and the city of LA knew that their power system would not be coming further out, and then when Burbank Boulevard was not allowed to go through the city of Hidden Hills, that kind of shut off the development of the city of Los Angeles further out. Community's always been into local control, has been a real major thing. Having your own school district was part of that.
Sure.
And the water district was also.
Yeah, certainly, especially when you look at sort of the landscape, the geography of like the basin or even the valley, and then you look at the Las Virgenes-Conejo region. I mean, we have really unique geography here. We have beautiful green mountains as of right now because of all the rain we have. We have Malibu Creek State Park, all of the scenery here. I mean, it's definitely worth, protecting and keeping the way it is. And I think that the residents that live here around here definitely appreciated the moves that were made back then. Sometimes, and Dave, as the resident engineer at the table, I'd like for you to chime in. Oftentimes I get questions about why the water that we buy has to come all the way from the northern Sierra Nevada mountains when there's water sources between here and there. Can you shed some light on that?
Sure. I think that's an interesting question. And Glen mentioned that our water supply didn't originally come from Northern California. So when we were formed, the State Water Project had not been built. And so we were supplied with our water from the Colorado River. And ironically, now that is one of the areas that we're really working on, is trying to restore that access of supply from the Colorado River. But really, when the State Water Project was built and the West Branch of the California Aqueduct was completed, it supplied water to Pyramid Lake and down to Castaic Lake. Metropolitan built the Jensen filtration plant, as Glen mentioned, in Granada Hills, and that was really the most direct route to supply water to us. So water is costly to move and to treat, and because of that, generally you want to try to source your water from the closest place where you don't need to pump it as much. And so generally we receive our water from the State Water Project through the West Branch of the Aqueduct. And it's the closest imported source of water supply for us. And Glen mentioned a little bit about our challenge here is not having local water. Of course, if we had local water, that would be our go-to source of water. But we lack that local water. In fact, that was why we were formed, is the water system was not reliable in the early days in the late 50s. And in fact, I heard stories that, every day in the afternoon, the water system would run out of water, and that was just normal. People were used to that.
Do you think how would that blow over today if that was a thing? Sometimes people turned on their faucets and the water just wouldn't come on.
We kind of joke at times that that would be a fun experiment. Probably not a popular one, but
No.
in the water business, we have a day without water. And
Yes.
the idea is to think about what would it be like? Imagine what it would be like if we didn't have water. And I think one of the difficulties in the water business we have is that we have such a reliable network of water delivery that people become very accustomed to it, and we take it for granted.
Absolutely.
But, our forefathers who were building our water system knew what it was like, that in the afternoon you didn't have water, and they knew what that meant and the consequences. And so really they understood better than anyone the importance of investing in a water system that would be reliable and that would serve the community for the future.
And certainly, I mean, that type of foresight is still true to the district and the JPA today with the Pure Water Project. I mean, we're seeing the challenges presented by climate change and climate variability and how that affects our water supply. So, creating this new local supply of water by way of the Pure Water Project, again, is in that same vein, making sure that we can continue to live and thrive in this region that people have grown to love. So, there's a really interesting geology to our area that makes our aquifers basically inactive. Can you talk about sort of the groundwater issues here and if there are any active wells currently being used?
There are some in some of the canyons back in Lobo Canyon. Pretty good water back there. A little bit different geology. The reason why our water isn't very good quality is because we have mountains, and these mountains were made from, a lot of material that was volcanic and in nature, and it gives us a lot of manganese and iron and bad players in water, which don't mix well with human consumption.
Right.
But there are some wells. We do have some wells in Westlake Village that we use for reclaimed water only. And they use some water in Westlake Village to fill their lake with from groundwater, but it's not good quality.
Yeah, and sometimes you can get a whiff of that poor qualities throughout some places in our service area. Hikes where you can kind of smell the water. I think they call them the stinkies around here. No worries. That's not the drinking water that we would ever serve to our customers, but that is what is native to the area and why we had to sort of outreach to those foreign sources of water up in the northern Sierra Nevada mountains.
There used to be a leak in the tunnel. It's been sealed since, but it leaked at the other end of the tunnel in Las Virgenes, the tunnel down below Tapia treatment plant. And if you drove through there, you could actually smell the rotten egg smell from that tunnel, but they did seal it eventually.
And
that's
the
sulfur, right?
The hydrogen sulfide that you're smelling. I know it's in Malibu Creek State Park. You'll smell that. Interesting, before Glen retired, I had him take me to go find Old Stinky, the well, which is no longer in operation.
No.
But we went together and we found the well.
Where's that at, Dave?
And,
it's Malibu Lakeside. It's off Seminole Drive. It's on a part. We didn't actually get to the well because the properties have been divided up and fenced off and all. So we didn't actually go the correct route. So we had to go through fences, and we were on someone's property. So we didn't want to.
We were ready to knock on doors.
Yeah.
But the groundwater is, it really has two big problems. One is it's poor quality. So it's got iron, manganese, high salt content, hydrogen sulfide. Now you can treat for all these things, but the problem is, on top of that, the wells are really low yield. So they don't produce a lot of water. Like a good well would produce less than 100 gallons a minute, which is not sufficient to be like a municipal quality well that would supply a water system.
Yeah, many of the people in Lobo Canyon have gotten off their wells because sometimes they would only pump, 4 or 5 gallons in an hour, and that's not livable. So they've hooked up to Las Virgenes water and very happy about that.
Very nice. So I kind of want to shift gears a little bit. We have a solid idea of the history and how we got here, but looking ahead at the Pure Water Project, I mean, this is something that's been in the works essentially since 2013 when a TMDL was done on Malibu Creek. Essentially, that is a water quality study that assesses what's going on in the creek. Now, we'll talk about this in one of our future episodes. That's all about Malibu Creek. But essentially, as water managers in the region, we have a hand in managing the quality and certainly the quantity in Malibu Creek, as it runs right next to our Tapia water reclamation facility. And so what this TMDL found essentially was that our nutrient-rich recycled water was causing some issues with the water quality in that creek.
TMDL, you might explain. Total
TMDL.
maximum daily load.
Yes. Total maximum daily load. Do you want to shed some light on that?
It's just how much of any ingredient like a nitrogen or whatever ingredients can be put in the water. And ours is a very stringent TMDL, but it's total maximum daily load of that element.
Yeah. And so that study, the TMDL, essentially led to restrictions on things like total nitrogen and phosphorus and how much, can be in the water that we're discharging into the creek. And so in the name of watershed protection and making sure that the flora and fauna in that creek continue to be protected, those restrictions are getting a little bit tighter. And so we essentially needed to find something else to do with that high quality recycled water that we had been discharging into the creek for decades. And so we are reinvesting it in the Pure Water Project and sending it through tried and true advanced purification technology to essentially create a new drinking water supply that is now set to provide up to 20 to 30% of our water supply locally by 2028. Obviously, this is a huge project. And as the water agency in the region, we weren't the only ones that were making the decisions for this project. So can you talk about the decision-making process that resulted in Pure Water and who all it involved?
Sure. So I think this is really a fascinating story because it was a pretty unique decision-making process. And we were not originally thinking of the Pure Water Project. In fact, that wasn't our strategy at all to address the challenges we were having at that time. And so you really have to go back to that time, go back 10 years in 2013. And we as a district and our joint powers authority, we were really embroiled in a lot of conflict. And we talked a little bit about the TMDL. We had some real concerns about the TMDL, the science behind it, and really the causal linkage to some of the impairments in our creek. And because of that, we had lodged a challenge on the TMDL and actually had litigation with the EPA, with the federal government over the TMDL. And so we were facing some difficulties. We were going through a court process. We had reached the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And so our next stop was actually the U.S. Supreme Court on that TMDL.
That's serious.
It was serious, and it was a big deal. And I remember at the time it was over the holidays, and I think we had gotten together and we thought about whether we were really making progress in the legal battle. And also, I think realizing that long-term litigation was probably not the right path forward to get to solutions. I think we all know that. We all know litigation probably doesn't get us to the best and quickest outcomes. So what we did back then, we started and organized a stakeholder effort. And, thinking back, that was really key to our success. We brought into our boardroom, we brought all of the key people who had a stake in Malibu Creek in the watershed. And it was a little nerve-wracking at the time because we invited in some of the individuals who were on the other side of our TMDL. So we included some of the environmental organizations like Heal the Bay, like the Waterkeeper, who had been on the other side of our litigation. And we realized they had an important voice and that they could help us in identifying the solution. What came out of that is really a robust stakeholder process. We included the elected officials for our region. We included the state parks, the Santa Monica Mountains, MRCA, and what we did is we talked about all of the different alternatives to address our problem. So we kind of reframed the whole problem that we were facing and looked at what are the different options that would address the problem. Now, we had gone into that effort thinking that we had the solution. And at the time, our plan was to build a reservoir. We wanted to build a seasonal storage reservoir to store recycled water in the wintertime so that we could use it in the summertime. And from an engineering standpoint, and I'm an engineer, that seemed like the obvious solution, that we needed storage. But at the same time, we knew that it would be really, really difficult to build a new reservoir in the Santa Monica Mountains because this is building a new dam, and there's a lot of environmental concern around building a dam.
This is a very protected watershed here, right? We have some of the greatest biodiversity here, so getting these projects off the ground, I mean, it's really difficult.
It is.
Before we had the committee, though, the stakeholder group, we actually had engineers plan on all the alternatives, and that included having an ocean outfall in Malibu and what it would take to do that, included taking the water to Chatsworth Lake and keeping it there, included a dam in the Danielson Ranch, which is in Ventura County, also a dam we were talking about up Malibu Canyon, up in one of the canyons up in Malibu Canyon, and also we even studied a dam in a site that the city of Los Angeles wanted to have as their alternative to the Chatsworth Reservoir, which the Chatsworth Reservoir used to leak, and that's why they don't put any water in it, because it leaks. And a leak wouldn't bother us, but in the city of Los Angeles, they were losing good water, and their alternative site was in Stokes Canyon. And they actually studied it, and we thought this would be a good option for us. We also looked into an option of partnering with the city of Los Angeles to take the reclaimed water to Encino Reservoir, there was no right-of-way issue. There were, it's not a lot of pumping involved, and the pumping would be basically bringing it back, but which would probably be a smaller amount, so it'd be less pumping. But and that was my preferred alternative at the time. I thought that made more sense, partnering with the city of LA because they need more water resources. And at one point, the city of LA decided to get out of the deal, and that was the best thing that ever happened to us. And we had many general managers been working on this for years and years and years, and we never got anywhere because there was not a total commitment to it.
Wow.
And Dave made a total commitment to it, and that's the reason why we have proceeded. And the committee came up with a recommendation, which I was fully supportive, which is the Pure Water Project.
So can you talk about sort of the tipping point where it went from what we thought were the obvious answers with, a reservoir or a dam and kind of shifted to indirect potable reuse?
I think it's hard to put your finger exactly on the tipping point, but one of the things I think there's no doubt it was the stakeholder process and bringing in this diverse group of stakeholders. And, we all sat at a table in the boardroom, and our board was included, Glen included, and we all sat, at the table equal, and we were dispersed, and everybody had a voice. And we did a whole series of team building exercises, and what we did, we took a step back and we looked at the problem in a new light. Like, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? And then rethinking what are the solutions. So I went into that thinking I knew what the answer was. And I was actually thinking the stakeholder process was going to help me get to implementing that.
And get people on your side.
And get people on my side.
Yeah.
And that was totally not the way it worked out.
Yeah.
What it worked out is look at the problem in a different light, and that there are other potential solutions.
Yeah.
And the group coalesced around 6 different options and then created a whole set of criteria about which of those 6 options best meets the criteria that we're setting out to solve. And what emerged from that is it was pretty clear pretty quickly that building a new reservoir and a new dam was not the solution. And that was even clear to me. We ended up having 2 alternatives, and Glenn mentioned one of them, that were sort of the 2 front runners towards the latter part of the stakeholder effort. And that was this partnership with the city of Los Angeles, building a pipeline and conveying the recycled water to their Encino Reservoir. And then that would be used by the city in the future, or keeping the water within our own service area and through potable reusing that. And those 2 alternatives really rose to the top. What ultimately really helped on making the decision was we came to the conclusion that water is too valuable to ship outside of our service area. We wanted to keep the water here. And I'm really thankful that we came to that conclusion, because it required some forethought that water, even wastewater or recycled water, is valuable enough that we want to keep it within our service area. We don't want to ship it outside.
Absolutely.
And that really ultimately is what supported the Pure Water Project. And it wasn't even called the Pure Water Project then. I think we called it seasonal storage through indirect potable reuse or something really techie like that. But eventually we rebranded it and renamed it the Pure Water Project, Las Virgenes-Triunfo.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you have innovation that's there and tried and true technology that can turn this recycled water into a much needed drinking water supply, it's way too valuable to ship out. And it definitely, I think that this stakeholder process that led to this project is a testament to the effectiveness of inclusion and a holistic perspective on decisions like this, because it's not just the district or the JPA or even just our customers that a decision like this affects. And so it makes a lot of sense to bring in different perspectives to get to the best decision. And I think that we were really leading the way with that decision as well.
Yeah, we were really, prior to this, we were worried about disposal of the water, because that was our problem. They couldn't put it in Malibu Creek during the summer, and they were going to have a year-round ban in it of water. And so when it turned from a disposal issue to a resource issue, that just turned everybody's heads. And that was the real turning point in my mind, was when we got away from thinking about it as a disposal problem,
right,
and it became a resource problem, which was an opportunity, not a problem.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I remember too that it was a little bit uncomfortable, and going into the process, being an engineer, you kind of value certainty and knowing where things are going, and going into that stakeholder process was really, you had to let go of the outcome and acknowledge that we didn't have all the answers. We didn't know the right solution. We weren't 100% sure what the best option was, and that was uncomfortable. It didn't feel real comfortable
as an engineer, I'm sure.
As an engineer, and I think I share that only because my experience now is that when you feel that feeling, it says that you're really truly open to being collaborative. Then you should feel uncomfortable, because if you've already made up your mind, you're not really collaborating. You're just listening and trying to come up with reasons why the other solutions don't do the job. When you're really pushing yourself and feeling a little bit uncomfortable and open to other alternatives that perhaps you haven't thought about, that's when you're kind of really doing your best work.
Yeah, and certainly why collaboration is sort of one of our leading principles here, because then we go from storing or shipping out water to now being able to have a process that'll actually create a new supply of water.
An issue with the saltiness of our water is also the disposal of the brine, or the salts that are in the water and all the bad actors that are in the water. And this comes with a solution, which is using the Cayugas discharge, which will be really good, because to me that means we'll be able to take some of our local water and possibly reuse it. And that has a tremendous opportunity for us, I think.
Yeah, and absolutely, sort of bringing our water full circle, right? This idea of closing the sustainability loop by maximizing that beneficial reuse. We've been treating wastewater to tertiary standards for decades, since 1972, and making use of that recycled water for irrigation. Now we have this innovation and this technology that will allow us to treat it for even higher uses and create a new supply. So certainly sort of getting two benefits when we were initially just trying to solve for one issue. So the Pure Water Project, due to go full scale online in 2028, so we're about 5 years away. Can you talk a little bit about what the district and what the JPA as a whole is doing to improve reliability for the near term?
Sure, there's a variety of things, and it really is a combination of things together that improve our reliability. So there's no doubt we're vulnerable to times of shortage and drought. We've just gone through 3 years of drought that have been really impactful. So the Pure Water Project is an important component of it, but it's not the whole story. So another thing we need to do is we need to be more efficient with our water usage. We need to change our urban landscape here. Our community is very green, which is beautiful and great, but also we do have a lot of high, water using landscape, a lot of turf.
Lots of
and
turf.
So we need to really adapt and to transition to more climate appropriate, drought tolerant landscaping. So we're really focusing on that coming out of the drought. We saw a lot of our turf and lawns die during the drought, and so now is an opportune time to really put back more climate appropriate landscaping.
And I'm going to add a shameless plug here. We have a beautiful demonstration sustainability garden actually here at the LB headquarters, where anyone that's interested can come and visit and see several, probably at this point, thousands of different choices of sustainable landscaping. Oftentimes many native, climate appropriate, always drought tolerant. There's a variety of it. So we're not just saying this is what needs to happen, but we're also showing you how to make it happen. Just had to add that in there.
Nice. And I'm a big fan of the garden. So then the other parts of it are that we do need to improve our water delivery system. And so, we saw during the drought, we really stretched our statewide water delivery system to its limits and even a bit beyond. So looking sort of more regionally and then even statewide, on the regional level, we're working really closely with Metropolitan Water District to make the investments that are needed to better move water to our part of their service territory. And we found in the drought that the Met system has some challenges in moving water to the far extents of the western side where we are, Cayugas, and even the western portion of the city of Los Angeles in the valley, in the West Valley. So Metropolitan is looking at a whole variety of options that will allow them to move water from east to west and even to pump water northerly through the Sepulveda Pass. So that will help us during times of shortage on the State Water Project, move water from storage like in Diamond Valley Lake and also from the Colorado River out to us. And then looking more statewide, we need to make investments in our state water project too. We really can't have the largest, most sophisticated water project arguably in the whole world that is delivering for 2 years in a row 5% of its contracted amounts. That's really not what was envisioned by the architects of the water project. And so improvements are needed. There's a variety of them. One of them is we need to improve how we operate and move water through the Sacramento-San Joaquin Bay Delta. And Glen mentioned the peripheral canal, but and that has long passed. But now what we're talking about is a Delta Conveyance Project, and a project that can balance the ecosystem in the Delta with delivering water to the State Water Project, and doing that reliably, especially when that water is available in years like this where we've had a really healthy snowpack and we have good runoff, and to move that water through the Delta, protect the fish in the ecosystem, and keep an aqueduct full that can deliver water and allow us to store it and use it in times of drought.
Could you touch on the current state of Water Fix right now?
So Water Fix, and it's gone through so many names now,
right,
that it's evolved into Delta Conveyance or DCP now, but it's undergoing the environmental review. And it's this is, I guess you would say, take two on environmental review. So that the Water Fix, California Water Fix, as it was previously called, was a 2-tunnel proposal, and that environmental process was completed. That was during the Brown administration. Governor Newsom took office, and Governor Newsom has supported the Delta Conveyance project, but supported a smaller project that consists of a single tunnel.
Right.
And so there is a new environmental process that is underway. The public comment period has been completed, and that environmental review is going to be completed. It needs to be completed before the project can then be permitted and move towards construction and financing.
So the 2 tunnels were reduced after the EIR was also already approved.
Correct.
It was reduced to 1 after that.
To a single tunnel.
Oh, okay. I see.
And there's new EIR based upon the 1 tunnel.
Sure.
And they've actually reconfigured it so that they're no longer going through the Delta, but around the Delta, kind of like a peripheral tunnel. But the other thing that is important is storage. It's very frustrating to see millions and millions of acre feet of water a week going out to the ocean with no use at all, and except for fish. And fresh water, sometimes the whole Golden Gate Bay area is all fresh water, and that's unsustainable. So one of the projects is called Sites Reservoir. It was a 2 million acre feet reservoir in Colusa County, and it basically would be taking flows from the Sacramento River and pumping them where there are high flows that no one will use, and pumping them into sites, and then taking a use of that later. This investment on Met's part will probably be about $1 billion, but will have up to a quarter of the water, and that can be several 100,000 acre feet of water if we need it, if it can be filled. So that's a very important project. Also, Met is sponsoring The Antelope Valley storage facility, which is an underground storage facility, has some issues, but it's going to be able to hold a lot of water there. So it's going to basically a reservoir that we can have access to. We will have access to. They're also studying desal. It's always studying desal, ocean desal, probably in the Oxnard area. Yeah, but at this point, that's a very pricey option.
Sure.
And everybody likes to talk about low-hanging fruit, but all the low-hanging fruit for Las Virgenes has been picked a long time ago. And so we're now just we're paying the price of our success, in that we use more reclaimed water per capita than any company out here, any water district in the community, the area.
Yeah.
So, which is a tribute to a lot of leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, water topics and its availability and its excess now with, the current winter storms is back in front of the public consciousness. So much so that we're getting some meaningful investments in projects like some of the ones that we've discussed from a statewide perspective, conveyance, storage, water fixer. What's the new name for it again?
Delta Conveyance Project.
Delta Conveyance Project. I'll keep that in my mind. And certainly that's from a statewide perspective. Here in the Las Virgenes Conejo region, Pure Water Project is our answer. This is a project that is environmentally preferred over things like desal, a project that will be more efficient. It uses less energy. So for right now, this is our answer. This is what we're prepared for. This is what we currently have a demonstration facility up and running for. We encourage visitors, residents or not, to come and visit, learn about the process. You can see it working up close and personal. You can taste the water. We really want folks to get comfortable with this process and to have really their questions and any concerns that they have answered and addressed. So really encourage those of you that are interested or skeptical to come out and learn and continue the conversation with us.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Full Circle Podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at LVMWD, on Instagram at Las Virgenes_MWD, and on Facebook at LVMWD. Find our Full Circle Podcast on your favorite streaming service, or go to ourpureh2o.com and smash on the Full Circle Podcast link for all other episodes.